Hello, guys. Welcome to this Friday edition of CastCast. I'm your host, Casty Streeter. Today we're going to be going over the Sunday games and the game and the Monday Night Football game, the last one of the year. Because I covered, all the holiday games and even Saturday's games in my other video, just because I didn't want to, people to miss the shot to watch and see what my thoughts were, days ahead of time. So with that, I'm gonna get started. We have the Jets visiting the Bills. Obviously, the Bills, as we all know, can no longer clinch the number one seed with the Christmas Day win from the Chiefs, and the Jets have struggled mightily this season. They've won a couple in a row, or I mean, at least one in a row, or sorry, one game in a row. But forgive me. Oh no, they lost last week, and then they won the week before. That's right. And nothing really to play for besides maybe the hopes that this team can get it together and they can have possibly a culture change next year with a new head coach. Now, the Bills, regardless of whether or not they feel the need to play anybody, which I still think that they do, you know Josh Allen is still competing for MVP. A lot of people say he's the favorite. He is playing very, very well and consistently through a lot of different games. And, I do still believe he's the favorite just because of the opponents they've played and how he's played against, tougher opponents. The only reason I think Lamar Jackson is under him, despite the better stats, is because they haven't played as well consistently throughout the whole year, even though they are now winning that division. Um, with that being said, I don't expect the Bills to really rest. I think they still need to correct things on defense and get some, opportunities that way. But I'm going to take the Bills, of course, at home, where they haven't lost this year. Moving on, we have Titans, Jaguars. Kind of a ridiculous game. The only reason this, has any sort of relevancy is, whether Jacksonville or Tennessee get a higher draft pick. Um, Last week, Jacksonville lost to the Raiders, in a 19-14 game. And you look at Tennessee, just a season where Will Levis, you hope that he would have progressed better. I think he makes good throws, but then he makes some really boneheaded ones, obviously, at really bad times in the game. This game, they only give Tennessee a 1 point advantage. And it just, kind of looks to me like, the favorites here should be Tennessee, I guess, even though they're not at home. I I guess it's hard to determine, but I'm going to go with Tennessee just cuz I think that Jacksonville's really lackluster and they lost to the Raiders last week. Panthers, Buccaneers. The Buccaneers need to obviously win this game. If they lose, they're likely out of the playoff hunt. Hosting a division rival in the NFC South. They are 3-4 at home, which isn't very good. Maybe it's a good thing for them if they make the playoffs because they obviously would have one home game if they win the division. But then you look at they're on the road, which they've obviously performed better this year with only 3 wins at home so far. This would make 4, obviously. But Tampa Bay, after not having a good game against the Cowboys last week, a game where they just kind of stuttered way too much, too many key plays missed, against the Cowboys, a Cowboys team that looks like they are willing to put it out on the line for McCarthy, the coaching staff, and the team in general. A team that could definitely be better next year, adding the necessary pieces. But looking at Carolina, I mean, they're a scrappy team. They've had some close games recently. And really, I mean, you want to show that there's a lot to look forward to next year. You try to play your heart out against a division rival that is up there with the toughest, what I would say is the best team in the division, despite their record and them, falling behind the Falcons because they didn't match up against them very well. So, with that being said, I'm still going with Tampa Bay. And, I expect a win here to keep their playoff hopes alive. Raiders, Saints. As we all know, the Saints were the first scoreless team on Monday night. And, the Raiders beat the Jaguars last week. And it's interesting because, Gardner Minshew isn't playing. They've been playing Aiden O'Connell. Alvin Kamara and Derek Carr, I think, were both like ruled out or something, for this game. So we'll see Spencer Rattler once again. Maybe this team will have some better preparations, with it being, another week without Carr or Kamara. And, I know that the Saints, they don't have, anything to play for at this point, but neither do the Raiders. But perhaps, I mean, a loss for them here doesn't really improve their seeding. Obviously, they have 5 wins. Wouldn't really affect them much against the Raiders. The Raiders are favored in this game. I do think that they just have more weapons, to be honest, than the Saints, and the Saints just really looked to struggle a lot last week. And I expect the Raiders to come away with a road win here in New Orleans. Cowboys, Eagles. This game looks a lot more interesting now with the Cowboys essentially trying to play and play and play, and they favor the Eagles by a lot. But I'll be real, there's something telling me that I don't trust Philadelphia because Hurts, I believe, has been ruled out. And I guess CeeDee Lamb being out in this game is huge as well, but I think that Philadelphia is just kind of banged up, and you don't know, since they know that they're preparing for Kenny Pickett, it's gonna be a completely different game plan, and I think that Hurts, with his mobility and that sort of thing, will be missed. Not that Pickett doesn't have any mobility, but I'm actually this is gonna be my underdog game. I'm gonna take the Cowboys in this game as my bold underdog statement win in this game because I just don't I just don't see Philadelphia doing super well, and there's a reason why Kenny Pickett is a backup. And while Dallas has a backup of their own, Cooper Rush has just been playing like way better. And I think that even with CeeDee Lamb being out, I think that they can rely on the run game. And I think that with Cooper Rush making the decisions that he is, that could be the difference in this game. Because while the Eagles have been really good turnover differential, that's essentially what cost them last week is the inability of Kenny Pickett. So I'm going to take Dallas over Philadelphia, to really, because I mean, I'll be honest, I think that last week kind of proved that it's like, you shouldn't have all your faith in Philadelphia, because no matter how stacked their team was, it's still hurting without a QB that is mobile, because I mean that was a huge part of making up for the fact that Hurts hasn't been passing for a lot of yards this year. Colts, Giants. The Colts still battling for a playoff spot. They obviously need to win out to go 9-8 to even have a shot, and then I believe the Broncos need to lose out. So looking at this, they go to the Giants, who haven't won a single home game this year. They've lost 8. And, obviously Drew Lock has been their QB. And I don't mind how Drew Lock has looked. I mean, it's not anything, spectacular, but for being a guy that had sat on the bench, all of the year, with a QB carousel that is as the craziest we've seen this year with Daniel Jones, getting released, and then you've got goodness, why can't I remember his name? You've got DeVito, getting hurt and not playing. I just think that, the Giants, would be better off looking into Drew Lock than DeVito. So, with that being said, I still think that Indianapolis has a good amount of weapons. Jonathan Taylor's healthy. That's, what you want to see. And he had that huge game, last week. And I mean, you still want to, develop Richardson, and what better way to play against a defense that isn't exactly a pushover, but is going to play you, pretty tough, in the Giants. But I am going with the Colts. They need to keep their playoff hopes alive. And the Giants, I just don't think have what it takes to really beat a team like this at this point in the season. Moving on to Dolphins, Browns. Obviously, the Dolphins, another team that needs to win out. Three of those in the AFC. Um, the Dolphins going to visit Cleveland. They really got to keep Tua upright in this game, and I mean, be able to run it with Achane. And looking at this, Tyreek Hill's a little banged up, Judy's a little banged up. You know, the season hasn't gone quite, what you would think for Miami with Tua missing so many games. And, now they're in this position where, they need luck on their side, to get in. But I think that they come away with a win in this game. And I think that Tua, really averts the pressure with his quick releases. And even though they don't have Waddle, I, I think that they will still get the job done. And I think that, Jonnu Smith has been playing really well for them on the offensive side. And it's a chance for him to really shine. And I mean, he should at this point be a focal point of their offense, being that big tight end that can be the security blanket for Tua and even more. But yeah, I'm going to take the Dolphins, of course, against the Browns to keep their season alive. Green Bay Packers, Minnesota Vikings. I was not surprised that they flexed this game to later. I honestly feel like they should have flexed it to Sunday nights. But obviously, the Packers have had two primetime games in a row, Sunday, Monday, and now a 4 o'clock game, for Sunday. Now, this is a pretty big game. The Packers defense, I think, will be very confident. I mean, I think that they've ruled out Jair Alexander. And I think that, the secondary has been playing a little bit better. I get that they played the Saints last week, but still no team had shut out in the last, I believe, like 500 games or something is a stat that I heard, you know, for a few years or something like that. I think that it's just harder to shut out a team now that teams can start from the 30 essentially with the kickoff rules. But it also just, I think that the Packers defense is playing really hungry, and I think that Edgerrin Cooper, since coming back, has really been the difference maker, and who I said would be the difference maker to kind of help and fix this struggling linebacker core where, Quay Walker has, missed some time, but Eric Wilson has played well. McDuffie hasn't been, as much of a liability in coverage. But, the thing that I think about is this offense is Jordan Love hasn't thrown a pick in 5 games, or I think is what it is now. And, you know, obviously the Vikings, the last time these teams met, it was the Vikings scoring 28-3, I think, in the first half or something crazy. And then, or I think it was, yeah, or 28-10 maybe. I think there was a score before the half, if I remember correctly. But regardless, this has been kind of the case for the Packers and Vikings the last couple of years, where the Vikings come into Lambeau and they beat our the Packers, and they've done it the same way where it's the Packers host the first divisional matchup between these two, and then it's kind of the same story this year. Only I don't think it was as late. It wasn't as late of a game last year, even though it was a late game in the season. But regardless of that, the Packers are pretty healthy. They dodged a bullet with Christian Watson. Apparently his knee is only week to week and it's nothing huge, that's season ending, which I'm grateful for. And O'Connell has done like a phenomenal job with Darnold. I still think, however, that Darnold has had some, interceptions, that I wouldn't say a lot, but he does throw the occasional pick, which I think could be the difference in this game. I think the Vikings defense is going to bring pressure. But I think that, if you look at Love's numbers since he's become healthy, he's done a lot better with pressure. What I really think this game could come down to is, who has the ball last. I know it's kind of a, you know, bad way to look at a game, but with the way that the Packers defense has played and with the way the Vikings defense has played, with their ability to create pressure and to create, turnovers or, bad throws, I just, I think that it, could come to who has the ball last and is able to score last, based on like the defense performances or their fatigue or anything like that. But I'm gonna go with my Packers. I think that, they know that they need this game to really kind of silence the doubters, because the other theme around the Packers is that we've only beaten, so many teams over 500, but we've lost to the Vikings, Lions, and the Eagles, And I mean, while those were close games, they're still losses. And I think that Love is still waiting to have the best performance of the year. And, it's going to be one of those games where, creativity and, brilliant play calling are going to be essential from O'Connell and Matt LaFleur. But that's my prediction, and may the best team win on Sunday, because it really could go either way. Going down to Sunday night, we have Falcons Commanders. So the Commanders, obviously, last week coming off of a win that, many say they shouldn't have won last week. But to me, it's like, if you are an unprecedented team and, your QB goes down with a concussion during the game, you know, that shows that the rest of the team needs to kind of, step up and pick up the slack. And it's not like the Eagles didn't have the talent, but Washington just never quit. They kept on playing despite how dire it looked, and I didn't think they had a shot. But then they stopped the Eagles, on a 3-and-out, and then they're able to, go down and score, at the end of the game. So I think it shows a lot of character from Washington, and I think that's something that can't be undervalued. With a team that obviously they're in the playoffs, and it's like they didn't. I mean, I don't think they have a shot to take the division. If the Eagles were to happen to lose out somehow. But the Commanders are showing that they're really trying to show that they can win these tough, gritty games. And the Falcons, obviously switching over to Penix, he obviously, brought some new fire to them last week. It was still kind of a doldrum of a game early on, and then certain things kind of ignited the Falcons. The Jesse Bates pick six, I think the first of his career is what they said, which is kind of miraculous with how many picks he's gotten, over his career now. And looking at this game, I just think that the Commanders are going to win. They need to prove that they can beat a team like this. I think that Dan Quinn is going to know how to make the young, the very little game time experience. I don't want to say young with Penix because he is the oldest of the rookies. Besides, I think like him and Bo Nix are like the oldest, but he is very limited. He's only got a 1 game resume, obviously, having started last week. But I think that Dan Quinn is going to know how to make the young QB unsure of himself. And, this will obviously be a true test for Penix. Whereas last week, they played the Giants. But yeah, looking at this, I'm gonna take the Commanders, to get a good win here and to really kind of solidify themselves solidify themselves, as a team that can, put teams away. Moving on to Monday night, we have kind of a really bad doozy of a game, to end that Monday night. You know, Monday night, you know, content this season, games this season, because obviously the final week of the season, all the games are played on Sunday. But looking at this, the Detroit Lions are just going to steamroll San Fran. Now, obviously Detroit's defense is pretty banged up, as we all know. And, looking at, this game, I just think that, I don't know, whether the Lions are going to be so all out, maybe they will be, I mean, I guess they probably will be to hold the number one seed, but I just wonder if, because most of the time that they've had these rematch games from last year, they've tried to embarrass them, starting with the Cowboys, then moving on to, even the Bears, who are obviously a divisional opponent, but overall, looking at this game, it's like I wonder if they're going to try to really embarrass San Fran. I mean, it was a good game that the Lions dropped last year in the NFC Championship game, but who the heck knows? I mean, my gut feeling is that they're going to go all out, to really try and say that, like, hey, we're not, the San Fran can't obviously get into the postseason. And I don't know if they really, I mean, have any reason to really try to play and ball out, I guess, it's like what ruined Detroit's number one seeding. I mean, but I'm gonna go with Detroit obviously in this game. It would be crazy to me if they lost this game. That would really start to, worry the Lions fans, and I don't think that the Lions players want that to be kind of the narrative that, like, hey, this team is too banged up to even compete with a banged up San Fran team, the next banged up team in the league, the next most banged up team in the league. But, who the heck knows? It could be, Monday night, last week was a shutout. Maybe the narrative changes this Monday night, but who knows? But that's all I have to say about this. I think it's kind of the writing on the wall. If San Fran can't perform against the really banged up defense that essentially a lot of people have been able to score on, where they, the Lions have to get into shootouts a lot now. But we'll see what happens. We'll see if there's a little bit of fire to defend, the fact that they beat the Lions last year, or if that's the case, or what's going on with San Fran. But yeah, obviously, like I said, I'm going with the Lions. I don't really see this as a game they lose, even with how banged up they are. And that's what I think. But that'll conclude these picks and picks, uh, these games and picks, for this Sunday and Monday night. And if you want more NFL content like this, I upload twice a week on Tuesday and Friday. And please hit that like button, comment if you have any thoughts on any of the games, or even on any of the Saturday games. I obviously did a separate video for those so people could have the chance to watch them before the games. That'll essentially be tomorrow when this video uploads. But tell me what you think, and who you think is going to make the playoffs, if you have any of those sort of predictions. But this is Castcast, and I'm your host, Casty Streeter, and as always, go Pack Go.